Ever since Tony Stark shouted,
Underoos!
Spider-Man hasn't swung solo. Every Tom Holland Spider-Man movie came with an A-list MCU co-star. Iron Man,
Dude!
Nick Fury,
Dude!
Doctor Strange.
Dude!
And now, Spider-Man Brand New Day is throwing in the Hulk and the Punisher.
Dude!
It's a pattern that's hard to miss, because deep down, Marvel doesn't trust Peter Parker to carry a film alone. But here's the question. Should they?
No! No!
To understand why Marvel keeps pairing Spider-Man with A-listers, you have to go back to 2015. When that landmark deal between Sony and Disney was struck, it was a work of corporate genius. Marvel Studios, the unstoppable hit factory, would get to produce the new Spider-Man films. This wasn't just a friendly partnership, it was a strategic symbiosis. And the first item on this new menu? The ultimate seal of approval. Attaching Robert Downey Jr. to Spider-Man Homecoming was the single most important move they made. It instantly changed the conversation. The movie wasn't the third Spider-Man reboot in 15 years anymore. It was the movie where Spider-Man officially meets Iron Man. It was an MCU event. They weren't just sharing a character, they were sharing assets. And RDJ was the biggest asset Marvel had. It was a signal to every single moviegoer on the planet. This Spider-Man is the real deal. He's one of them. But here's where the genius kicks in. This business decision wasn't just a gimmick, it became the entire emotional engine of the story. Think about it from a storytelling perspective. How do you introduce a new Peter Parker into a world that already has gods, super soldiers, and Hulks? You make him the kid brother of the whole operation. In Homecoming, Tony Stark wasn't just a cameo. He is the sun that Peter's entire world orbits around. He was the tech billionaire, absentee father figure who gave Peter the keys to the Ferrari, the Stark suit, but tells him to stick to driver's ed.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
That line, that was the whole movie. The central conflict was Peter wrestling with this impossible duality, being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man while desperately wanting a seat at the cosmic grown-ups table. Tony's presence created that tension. It gave Peter's journey stakes. And then they doubled down. The villain wasn't some random dude who fell into a vat of chemicals. The villain was a direct consequence of the MCU itself. Michael Keaton's Vulture was a blue-collar guy whose livelihood was destroyed by Tony Stark's damage control initiative. He was the dark reflection of the little guy the Avengers never saw. This made the conflict deeply personal. Peter wasn't just fighting a bad guy, he was fighting his mentor's collateral damage. He was cleaning up Iron Man's mess. Casting an icon like Keaton, our first big-screen Batman,
I'm Batman.
brought a gravitas that made Vulture feel real, tragic, and terrifying. It wasn't just Spider-Man versus some CGI monster. It was the kid protege versus the ghost of his hero's past. The strategy was set. This wasn't just about borrowing star power, it was about borrowing history. And for the sequel, they had to fill the biggest void imaginable. With Tony gone, the world was mourning. And now, the pressure on Peter was immense. He was no longer Iron Man's intern, he was being touted as the next Iron Man, a role he absolutely didn't want. So who do you bring in to force him into that role? You bring in the boss, Nick Fury.
So good to finally meet you.
His presence immediately rips Peter out of his comfort zone, a high school vacation, and throws him into a global espionage crisis. Sam Jackson's iconic authority raised the stakes instantly. The vacation was over. It's now time to grow up. But Peter was grieving, vulnerable, and looking for a replacement mentor. And right on cue, the film gave him one. This was a masterclass in manipulative casting. They didn't just cast a good actor, they brought in Jake Gyllenhaal, an actor we, the audience, instinctively trust. He was charming, brilliant, and he brought that sensitive good guy energy. He was the perfect surrogate Tony Stark, and we fell for it, just like Peter did. The entire illusion of Mysterio only works because an actor of Gyllenhaal's caliber can sell both sides of the coin, the charismatic hero and the deranged, narcissistic villain. The betrayal didn't just sting for Peter, it stung for us. We were duped too. That's not just a plot twist, it's an emotional attack on the audience. By now the formula is clear. Use an A-lister to define Peter's emotional conflict for the film. In Homecoming, it was the desire for Tony's approval. In Far From Home, it was the escape from Tony's legacy. But for the third film, they didn't just need an A-lister, they needed to break the universe. No Way Home was where this strategy transcended business and storytelling and became pure, unfiltered cinematic mythology. The premise was born from teenage desperation. Peter's life is ruined, so he goes to the one person powerful and arrogant enough to even attempt a world-altering spell. Doctor Strange wasn't a fun sidekick here, he was a narrative necessity. His clash with Peter, Strange's cosmic hubris versus Peter's frantic emotional plea, was the catalyst for the entire crisis. You needed an established character with Cumberbatch's weight to make a plot this insane feel plausible within the MCU's rules. But we all knew what happened next. The spell broke, and the real reason No Way Home made $1.9 billion walked through a portal. Let's be real for a second. The return of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, of Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, and Jamie Foxx, this wasn't just fan service. That word is too small, too cheap. This was weaponized nostalgia. It was a cultural event disguised as a movie. Think about that feeling in the theater, that moment when Andrew Garfield ripped off his mask, the explosion of applause, the roar when Tobey Maguire steps through that portal. That's not just a reaction to a character, it's a reaction to a piece of our own lives returning to us. Millennials who grew up with the Raimi films, the generation that came of age with Webs, suddenly their Spider-Man was back, and he mattered. This transformed the film. It was no longer a sequel, it was a legacy, and narratively it was devastatingly brilliant. Peter didn't just meet other superheroes, he met himself.
Peter!
Yeah? Oh, sorry.
Did you mean that? Peter.
We're all called Peter.
He saw his own potential for tragedy, for loss, for rage. Andrew's Peter was still haunted by Gwen. Tobey's Peter had made it work, but carried the scars. Their presence gave Peter's final sacrifice its soul-crushing weight. So, does it work? Let's look at the receipts. Spider-Man Homecoming with RDJ as the co-pilot, $880 million, a massive success. Spider-Man Far From Home with Samuel L. Jackson and Jake Gyllenhaal, $1.13 billion, a huge jump. Spider-Man No Way Home with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse Ensemble, $1.92 billion. This was not a normal box office jump. That was a phenomenon. The nearly $800 million leap from Far From Home to No Way Home is almost entirely attributable to this event-level casting. It became the first movie of the pandemic era to cross $1 billion and the 7th highest-grossing film of all time. This wasn't just a movie release, it was a global pilgrimage. This is the fundamental difference between the Holland era and what came before. The Sam Raimi films were brilliant, self-contained masterpieces. Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina were perfectly cast as iconic, standalone villains. But the focus was always insular. The Mark Webb films tried to build a universe, but the weight was all on Andrew Garfield's shoulders. The Holland films were a hybrid species. They were both Spider-Man movies and MCU movies. The casting was a direct reflection of that dual DNA, a strategy that was simply impossible before that desperate 2015 deal. Now, there's a fair criticism here, a question that hangs over this entire trilogy. With all these massive stars, all this cosmic spectacle, does it risk overshadowing our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Does Tom Holland get lost in the shuffle? I'd argue no. The films are brilliantly structured to use these giants to highlight Peter's vulnerability. His awe of Tony, his manipulation by Mysterio, his desperation with Strange. They all reinforce that at his core, he is just a kid in way over his head. Holland's incredible performance is what anchors it all. He holds his own against legends, and that makes us root for him even more. But does it dilute the standalone story? That's a more interesting question. We went from a local arms dealer to a multiversal cataclysm in 3 movies. That's a long way from the streets of Queens. But I think that was the point. The entire trilogy was a grand, deliberate arc. It was about a boy who was given everything. Stark tech, Avengers membership, global fame, and had it all violently stripped away. The final shot of No Way Home is the thesis statement for the entire trilogy. No tech, no mentor, no one in the world even knows who he is. After 3 movies filled with the biggest stars on the planet, and yet, the strategy continues. For the next film, Names like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk and, most excitingly, Jon Bernthal's Punisher are in the mix. This signals a slight fascinating shift. Bernthal's Punisher, making his big-screen MCU debut, would anchor the story back on the ground, in the gritty, violent streets of New York. It would be a return to street-level stakes, but with an established, beloved character whose brutal methods would clash spectacularly with Peter's moral code. It's the same strategy: use a known star to create conflict, but with a different flavor, less cosmic, more concrete. Ruffalo's Hulk might play mentor or rival, keeping that MCU connection alive. So why does Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies lean so hard into A-list stars? Because they had to. Sony and Marvel needed to rebuild trust, tell a killer story, and make every film an event, and they did it brilliantly. These stars didn't just sell tickets, they built a trilogy that redefined Spider-Man for a new generation. After building a $1.9 billion empire on nostalgia and multiverse-level events, there really is no going back. Now, I want to hear from you. Are you hyped for a grittier Spider-Man with the Hulk and the Punisher in Brand New Day? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like and subscribe button for more.